Andrew McKellar is the Chief Executive of the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industries with me. We'll get to the energy issue in a moment, whether that deal will be done, how important that is. But on the rates decision, how difficult will this be for many businesses already struggling in the face of, 7 now, 8 consecutive rate rises?
Well, Kieran, it is an issue for business, and I think only yesterday we saw data from the ABS showing a very significant pullback in profitability, gross operating profits down 12.4%. I think that highlights the fact that businesses are grappling with rising input costs. Higher interest rates are adding to that. It's a difficult situation, and I think here we've got to strike the right balance. We've been saying now in the last couple of months that the Reserve Bank has to be careful how much more it pushes up interest rates. Of course, at the same time, we still have some degree of persistence in inflation. So it's a very difficult balancing act here, but there's no doubt this will mean some pain for business.
But we are, as you alluded to, with those profits down, and then you've got retail numbers down. There are various signs of tightening in the economy, aren't there?
Well, that's right. I think there are some early warning signs there. We know we've got the strong international headwinds as well. So we don't want to see a situation where internationally the economy is slowing. Other major economies are going into a risk of recession. We've got to try and avoid that risk here domestically if we can. When
you look at the other warning, Andrew Clennell spoke about it a moment ago. I asked the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, about this earlier in the program, about the wage price spiral risk which the RBA had raised. I asked the Treasurer, is there a potential that the IR changes could add to that? He said no, flat out. And in fact, he doesn't believe there is a risk of any wage price spiral causing even greater concerns in the inflationary context.
Well, I think today's decision on interest rates is a clear warning from the Reserve Bank. This is the risk of the policy that the government is now pursuing. Last week they passed legislation through. The deliberate objective of that legislation is to get wages moving. Now, if we get wages moving without having productivity growing at the same time, it will feed back into inflation. This is what the Reserve Bank has been signalling that it is concerned about. I think we have to, we have to be honest here. This is a real risk that we could see higher wages growth in the coming months, in the coming quarters, feeding back into inflation. If that's the case, then there is a risk that the position that the Reserve Bank is taking here will go further. And I think that will be bad for the economy. We don't want to get into a situation where wages are chasing prices and prices are pushing up inflation. That's going to be pain for the Australian economy.
The Treasurer was pretty much making the case that there'd been a disconnect in terms of rising profits over the recent history with no commensurate rise in wages. And this is simply correcting that path.
Well, I don't think that that's a full analysis of the data. We've seen strong profitability from one particular sector, from the resources sector, strongly boosted by higher commodity prices. Now, we saw that start to turn around. They've come back to the pack yesterday. For most other sectors in the economy, whether it be retailing, whether it be manufacturing, whether it be construction, profitability hasn't been that strong. So I think there is a risk that if we now go after a policy of pushing up wages, feeding into input costs, already under pressure, profitability coming down, but inflation still too strong, then we've got some risks for the Australian economy.
You've already seen wages, as we touched on, moving before these laws even come into effect. In that context, would you argue that the laws are superfluous?
Well, business has been saying this for some months now. We've been saying out there in the marketplace, don't mind what you see with the wage price index. What we're seeing in the marketplace is that we have very strong demand for labour. We can't meet that demand, and wages are pushing up in the marketplace. We've said that's happening. We've been ignored. The laws have gone through. I think the risk here is that will add to pressure on inflation if we don't see the trade-offs in productivity occurring at the same time.
And you've got the profits down at the time that business groups, as you said, had been ignored, had a defeat in the Parliament with the IR laws passing and now the rate rise. How concerned are you heading into 2023?
Look, I think there are risks there for sure, and we have to, get the balance of policy right going forward. We do have to try and get inflation under control. If we don't get inflation under control, then that is going to be, I think, the number one risk. The Treasurer himself, if you go back to the October budget statement, at that point in time, he was saying this is public enemy number one. This is the major risk. We've got to get that under control. If we can do that, then of course we will see increases in real wages going forward. But I think that's the real danger signal.
The energy deal, hopeful this week. The government's certainly still optimistic they can get that deal with the states to put some downward pressure on the coal price input, as the government's set to put a cap on gas prices. How important is it for industry, for the business community to see some sort of arrangement done there?
Well, for industry, this is a big issue. I mean, it is having a major impact. It's feeding through into costs. The same for households. So we really do have to get that under control. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where, as a result of policies, federal and state, going back over a long period of time, we are now seeing that our energy generation capacity is not where it should be. The gas supply is not where it should be, and as a result, we've got the pressure on supply and on prices. Unfortunately, the government needs to do something like this. I think they have to do it. Hopefully, we can get take the pressure off those prices.
Andrew McKellar, Chief Executive of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thanks, Kieran.